and Scott Johnson. Have a seat. And then we're going to start with their individual opening statements, and we'll start with Mr. Eastham at the end and come this way.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Eastham. I'm a local to the Naselle area, born and raised there. I'm married for 19 years. I have 3 wonderful children that we're raising in Naselle, ages 13, 10, and 7. I am currently a deputy with the Sheriff's Office. I have nearly 23 years of law enforcement experience now. Last 12 years here at the Sheriff's Office, working the South County. In addition to my experience on the road, I just recently finished my bachelor's degree in business management this year, sort of to complement my criminal justice degree that I got after high school, and got that in '97. But I've been pursuing this position for about 2.5 years. Like I said, finished my bachelor's degree. I also got involved with a couple local nonprofit organizations, the Humane Society here in Long Beach, a nonprofit medical clinic in Oregon, just to learn administrative skills such as working a budget, strategic planning, and things like that. But going into what I'm looking to change here at the Sheriff's Office is really significant. And it all revolves around improving public safety, creating safer communities. And what I want to do, we've been very short-staffed at the patrol division for many years, and it's caused a lot of problems, slow response times, no deputies out. I plan on fixing that. I have a plan to add 3 deputies to patrol, an increase of about 30%, using the manpower we have through restructuring. It's not going to cost the county a penny. In fact, it's going to save money. Our deputies have not been getting critical training that they need, and I'll probably talk about that more in a minute, but our deputies will get the training. And again, I have a lot of ideas, and not enough time to talk to them all about it right now, but I'm excited, folks. I'm in this for the long haul, and I got a lot of energy, and I'm looking to make changes that you all will notice in real short order. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Souvenir. First, I'd like to thank you guys. This is amazing. This is amazing to have this kind of a turnout. It shows that this is important to you, and I think it's important to me to make sure to recognize that. So thank you. Give yourselves a pat on the back, because I appreciate it. I have about 20 years law enforcement experience. I've been married to my wife, Jamie, for the last 24 years. We have a daughter named Madison. And, yeah, my bad. I'm in trouble later. But 20 years law enforcement experience. And I started out as a Pacific County Reserve. And before that, I was an emergency medical technician, a volunteer for the volunteer fire department. At that point, I had to make a decision in my life. I had to decide if I wanted to be a firefighter or law enforcement. Obviously, I chose law enforcement. So, again, 20 years law enforcement experience. The last 8, I've been the chief of police for the Shellwater Bay Police Department. I've been a chief there a little bit longer than the sheriff has been the sheriff. It's the Shellwater Bay Police Department and the tribe. They're an amazing group of people. They've given me the opportunity to grow and work with their community. Community is very, very, very important to me. A lot of the questions that we'll probably get are about the drug problem, abandoned vehicles, that kind of stuff. How are we going to address those? The Sheriff's Office isn't going to be able to do it alone. We're going to need the help of the community. Again, with all those large problems. It's a team. It's not an individual thing, and I believe that any tasks that are accomplished are accomplished by a team and not just one individual. So thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Scott Johnson. I'm the current sheriff, and I'm honored to be here tonight, too. Just a little bit about me. For those of you that don't know me, I started my law enforcement career at the age of 15. I actually became the youngest commissioned officer in the state of Washington at at the age of 17. I started in 1977, and I was with the South Bend Police Department in the early days, followed by a stint at the Sheriff's Office as a reserve officer in 1983 and 1984. I moved on from that to become a Washington State Patrol trooper in mid-1984, and I continued in that position all here in Pacific County until 2010, at which time I was elected sheriff, and I have been sheriff since January 1st, 2011. I did want to thank my family for being here. Some of you are aware we had a terrible family tragedy and a loss of life yesterday, and so I'm honored that my children and my father and my uncle were able to join me here today. I didn't think that we would be able to be here. One thing that's really important I should mention is all three of us candidates have campaign literature over here at the table, and I would encourage you to view that. I do have a Facebook website. It's under Your Best Choice for Sheriff, because there's going to be so very many issues that we're not going to be able to cover here tonight, and I think it's important that you do look at the accomplishments that we've made. I'm very, very proud of not just what I have done, but what all of our staff have helped put together over the last 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question is directed to each of you, and we will start with you, Sheriff Johnson, and move that way. What do you feel is the biggest issue facing the Pacific County Sheriff's Office right now?
Well, I'm glad she asked an easy question, because the biggest problem that we deal with is the drug problem. And as many of you know, for years we had a very successful interagency drug task force. We were effective. We put people in jail, people that were prosecuted, and unfortunately in 2015, the condition of the state required that the legislature unfund the rural counties that received drug task force money. And started out with the cities that were participating, started running short on funds. All but one of them weren't able to continue to contribute to that. And then when we lost the money that we received for the drug task force, we had to disband it. And I have seen very negative effects from that. I'm sure all of you would agree with me that there's problems in many of the communities that need addressed for the drug problem. So I have been working really hard to speak with all of our legislators. I believe they're all on board. I promised you when I first ran that you'd see me more in our local communities than in Olympia, but that doesn't mean that when the need is there that I don't march to Olympia for what our citizens deserve. And most recently, I've testified twice before the legislature and at WASPIC. I was really happy just a few short weeks ago that WASPIC agreed to keep this out of dozens and dozens of things on their list. We made the short list of about 8 or 10 things that they're going to move forward. So I'm hoping when the legislature reconvenes this next January, we'll be able to provide them with the data that they need to bring that back to our county.
So, I think we need to start in-house. The community needs help. There are a lot of problems that need to be addressed, but I think there needs to be teamwork. There needs to be teamwork in the department. We need to work together. Again, as I said, there's some large problems out there, and they're not going to be solved by one person. We need to start working with different departments of the county. Like one of the big things that are being brought up is Department of Community Development, DCD. And Tammy, you are awesome. Just amazing. Some of the things that I hear are some of these complaints. And sometimes we hear, well, that's not our problem, that's DCD. Call them. Here's here's their number. We can't help you. It's a problem for the community. And again, it needs to be addressed as a team. So we need to work together with our partners. We need to work together with the Department of Community Development. We need to work together with our community. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. One of the things that we do at Stillwater is we try to have a good time. We're professional, absolutely professional, but you got to want to come to work. You got to want to answer the phone calls that you're getting at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, you need to come to work because there's a call out in this area. We need to have that teamwork. We need to have that motivation inside the department. It's the job of everybody in the department too. If there's a call, it doesn't matter if you're the sheriff. It doesn't matter if you're the undersheriff. It doesn't matter what is on your caller. You should respond to that call if you have the ability to do that. It shouldn't wait for the first deputy out. It should be, if you're out there and you see the call on the board, you go and address that call. Because that call can be, it may be a smaller call. It may be something that's not, an assault in progress or something like that. But that call is important to that person. That call might be the only time that community member has ever had to call law enforcement. And if that call isn't responded to, that leaves a bad taste in that community member's mouth. So it's extremely important that we all work together and do the best we can to get it done. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is, what is the biggest issue at Pacific County Sheriff's Office in our communities? This is the question I'm getting from folks in the community. I see this every day. I'm out on the roads as a deputy. Where are the police when I call 911? Okay? Sometimes we're in bed. We don't have 24-hour police coverage. We go home, go to bed, midnight, 2, 3 in the morning, sometimes a little bit later. That's when the criminals come out. And they're really wreaking havoc on our communities. And as a deputy, I'm sick of it. I'm here with you folks. You folks are fed up, especially here on the peninsula. So lack of police presence at the sheriff's office is huge. It's a major problem. Drug problem, that's a major deal. But if we don't have police to deal with the drug problem or deal with violent crime, where's public safety? How is the community going to feel like they're protected? I'm going door to door all over the county, and I'm listening to what people say. And this is what I've been hearing for years as a deputy, but it's the same thing. Why should I bother calling 911 if the police aren't going to show up? I don't feel safe in my homes anymore. That is a huge concern, folks, and it hits me right here. Sometimes I'm embarrassed as a deputy when I have to give excuses for our agency as to why we don't have deputies on the road. We've heard for decades, probably decades, but certainly under the last 8 years, it's about the budget. It's finances. We can't afford more deputies. Folks, that is not true. We can't afford to hire new deputies because of the budget, but what about the manpower we currently have? And that's where I'm going with this. Everybody knows, all the law enforcement chiefs of other agencies know that our patrol division is top-heavy in administration. It needs restructuring. With the manpower we currently have, folks, again, it's not going to be easy. I have my work cut out for me, but we can add. I have a plan to put 3 more deputies on patrol. It's going to be a game changer for us, and we're going to be able to start tackling these issues in our communities, the drugs, the crime. As it is now, there's incidences where it's an hour and a half, 2-hour response time for domestic violence or a mental health crisis. That's unacceptable. And, that's a short-term goal of mine that the community is going to see in real short order is more police on the road. And again, we're talking about a 30% increase. It's going to be huge. Again, there is so much we're going to be able to do with that. And another issue is this North-South County division that we have. And it's just always been that way. And that's part of the problem is there's never, seldom change because that's the way things have always been. So I want to open up this boundary, this north-south imaginary line that's at NEMA, and get deputies working both directions. We have an amazing canine unit. It's a German Shepherd. It's a intimidating force, let me tell you that. And it's a North County position. Our handler, Deputy Weigart, he works in North County because he lives in North County, and the dog is not being utilized. And I know the community really went to bat for this canine program. Folks, it can be better managed. And by opening up this boundary, getting deputies working both directions, we're going to utilize our resources better. Deputies in the north who are very proactive are going to get more experience, and deputies in the south who are, to be honest with you, getting burned out are going to get a chance to experience in North County, and you know, it's better use of our resources, and it's going to be a game changer for us. It really is.
Let's hold our applause until the end, yeah. Okay. Next question again for all of the candidates, and we'll start in the middle, go to Eastham, and then to Johnson. The question is, what are your specific qualifications, education, experience that you will bring to this job, and how would you use that to manage your time? How would you divide your time among the duties of the office?
So as I mentioned, I've been the Chief of Police for the Showwater Bay Police Department for the last 8 years. During that time, I've gone to some Leadership Academy training. I've gone to first level supervisor and some other trainings. Throughout my law enforcement career, I've been able to see examples. I've been able to see examples of good leadership. I've been able to see examples of bosses versus leaders. And based on that information, I can see what works, and I can see what doesn't work. I think one of the biggest compliments was receiving a letter of support. It was a unrequested letter of support, and it was amazing. The things that were said, just to the quality of the leadership of the Showwater Bay Police Department, it touched me. So I try to be involved in the community. I do my best. We work really, really closely with the Department of Emergency Management for the Showwater Bay Indian Tribe. And what we do with that is we had a grant, and the grant was through our FEMA, and it was for us to get an emergency operations center for the tribe. There were some things that happened. We weren't able to fund the building because the grant would only pay for a portion of it, and we needed additional funds. And long story short, we ran out of time. So one of the things that we did is we purchased a mobile command center. And with that mobile command center, basically that's our EOC. So it's extremely important for us to have that portion of equipment there. And with that, the police department is responsible for maintaining it and operating it. Inside that has all the equipment for ham radio, public safety radios, all of that. We use that for events like the 4th of July down in Tulkwan. I've taken training in incident command system. The fire department is extremely well versed in that, much better than law enforcement is. But it's important to know how that process works. And I've done my best to attend different exercises. There's tabletop exercises throughout the state. They hold those at Camp Murray. And I try to attend those the best I can and be involved in those exercises. Because obviously emergency management is a strong part of the Sheriff's Office too. I have a kind of a unique leadership style. My style is I do not lead from the top. It's not a dictatorship. One example is like when we decide to do the budget. It's not me standing there deciding exactly what's going to be in the budget. It's, I contact our officers, I ask them, you know, what do they need? What is it that they need to do the job to help the community? They're the ones that are out there running around with their feet on the ground. So get their input, and then with their input, that's how we draft our budget. The thing that helps with is it gives ownership to the people involved, and it just makes them part of the department, part of the community. So I think that's very important. Thank you.
Okay, the question was again, what are the specific qualities or qualifications, education, experience that we have as a candidate? How are we going to divide up our time and duties on the road versus the office? I have a fairly diverse experience in law enforcement. Again, I started right after high school. I graduated in '95 from Naselle. Pretty much immediately that fall got on as a reserve officer with the city of South Bend while I went to Grays Harbor and got my criminal justice degree. From there, in '98, I got hired full-time as an officer with the city of Camas in Clark County. Great organization to work for. Spent 7.5 years with them. Finally, my wife and I had our first child, and we looked at each other one day, and it's like, let's move back home. Okay, so we came back home to Naselle and started doing this whole thing down here. And again, that was 2006. I've been with the sheriff's office ever since then. But about 2.5 years ago, I guess something just clicked. It just dawned on me one day, you know, as a deputy, I'm seeing the issues. I'm hearing the complaints from the community. I have my own issues, and I didn't see any foreseeable change in the future. And I realized if there was going to be change at the sheriff's office, I don't know how I could sleep at night if I didn't prepare and put my name in the hat for this position. And so I went on a very detailed and intense last 2.5 years to prepare myself, again, with starting and finishing a bachelor's degree in business management, getting involved with nonprofit organizations in our community where I can learn administrative skills, budget, strategic planning. You know, I've done contract negotiations, project management, amazing experiences. And again, these are to push my own limits, you know, build myself up so that I can be prepared for this. You know, my degrees afforded me the chance to work in the schools. I'm currently a substitute teacher with Naselle and South Bend school districts. It's a fairly new venture, but it's awesome. It's amazing. One of the courses I took in my business degree was change management. Okay, that's what the community is saying we need here is change. Okay, I know what the changes are that need to take place, and you know it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a process. I've been studying how this process is going to develop, and I'm confident, folks, that the improvements you want can be made, and I'm looking to do that, not by myself, maybe facilitate the change, say we're going to go down a different road, but you know, we have a whole team that's going to help us out. How do we change? How as a sheriff am I going to divide my time and duties? I have a huge learning curve ahead of me, folks. I don't think this is something that I know how to do right now. As sheriff, I'm immediately going to reach out to other sheriffs in the region. You got Sheriff Snoz of Lewis County, Sheriff Scott, Grays Harbor, Howie, and Wakayak. These are great mentors, great sheriffs who I'm going to reach out to and say, help me. You know, help me fix Pacific County. And I can already guarantee you, I've already had some conversations, the help will be there. These sheriffs are willing and eager to help us in Pacific County. And as sheriff, I'm going to learn every area of the sheriff's office. I'm going to learn how to dispatch calls. I'm going to learn how to book someone into the jail. I'm going to learn what our office staff does at the front counter. Knowing what they do and how they do it is going to help me as an administrator to address their concerns, to really know what's going on in all aspects of the sheriff's office. And that's how I'm going to do it, flat out. Thank you.
Well, folks, I do know how to do the job right now, and I do know what we need. I've made tons of changes since I've been there over the last 8 years, and I think they're very, very positive changes. I've not been afraid to try new things. It's not always successful, but if you don't try, you just never know. I didn't bring my glasses here tonight, so I'm going to have to hold this out just a little bit. We're good, thank you. But some of the things I've done, I started first with the Grace Harbor Sheriff's Reserve Academy in 1983. I graduated there. It's approved by the Washington Criminal Justice Training Commission. I went on to the Washington State Patrol Academy in 1985. They did provide all kinds of great training for me over the course of my career. I received my police officer certification some years later after the state recognized the State Patrol Academy, so that was in 1987. I'm a 2010 graduate of the Washington State Sheriff's School. I'm a graduate of the Rural Executive Law Enforcement Management Institute. I went there in Denver, Colorado. Yes, it's the Arkansas school, but it's in Denver. I graduated from the National Sheriff's Institute, their executive development program, in 2012. I'm also a graduate of the FBI Command College, the Arkansas Leader Program. That was in Little Rock, Arkansas, so I did go down there as well. Graduate of the Executive Leadership Institute at Seattle University, and also I received in 2015 executive level certification, which is the highest level of certification that you can receive from the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Academy. So what does all that mean? It does mean something, but let me tell you a little story about a man named George B. Televic. He was not proud of this, but George B. Televic had absolutely not even a high school diploma. And George B. Televic was one of the first chiefs I worked for of the Washington State Patrol. He had over 3,000 employees under him, and he was dearly loved. I think he did the best job of any chief I worked under, which was quite a few over the course of my career, because he cared about his employees and he cared about his community. And I don't think you will find somebody that cares more about the community than I do. Do I get stuck in South Bend sometimes behind my desk? Absolutely. I sign my signature over and over and think I need a robot up there sometimes to do it, because I love to be out visiting with everybody in the community. So every chance I get, you probably see me in just about every alleyway in the county. I try and do that on nice days when people are out mowing their yard or taking the garbage out, so I can know and have a personal feel for what are the concerns that you have. And I'm always looking at different and innovative ways to address those concerns. And before I forget and run out of time, you've heard here we're top heavy and we're going to take people out of the office and put them on the road. Almost all of our management staff, myself included, spend time out on the road handling calls. Our recently retired Undersheriff Ron Clark's here. Ron, good to see you. Ron spent 30 years in this community, and he answered calls every single day. Now, I bet there's hardly another undersheriff in the state of Washington that did that. He never complained about it. He always went out and did it, as do our chief deputies, one of which is here, along with our 911 director. It's great to see some of our top management staff here. They have important jobs, and I've run out of time. So we can't take people away from those jobs and then put them out on the road full time. It just doesn't work that way.
Thank you. This next question is probably one you're all expecting. To all the candidates, how, under your management as sheriff, will the Pacific County Sheriff's Office interact with ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Federal Agency? Let's start with you and go down.
Okay, I'm glad we had a nice question. I kind of figured that we would tonight. We have many, she says. So we have not changed the way that we interact with ICE. ICE has been in our community many, many times. I have had 2 personal visits with them where I invited them to sit down with me in our office. I asked many questions. They promised they'd come back and give me answers, and then I've had no sit-down conversation with them since. What my stance on this is they have their own job to do. ICE is separate, or immigration is a separate issue. It's not dealt with by the sheriff's office, but because they are a law enforcement agency, if they call us, which I don't know that they have, but 1 or 2 times, if they need assistance, we're going to back them up and be there for them. But we're not going to go out and help them do our job. And I've heard many times people have come to me and they said, we've seen your deputies here helping them arrest people. And I've looked into every single case. Keep in mind, we monitor where our deputies are 24 hours a day. I can see it from my home, I can see it from my cell phone, and I can see it from my desk in the office. And many times these people that have come to me have confused other agencies. The last time, in fact, it was Department of Corrections that we were assisting, had nothing to do with immigration. And we're a small enough office that I have a pretty good handle on what our people are doing. Quite frankly, we're busy trying to take care of criminal cases, and immigration is not a concern to the agency. And we just haven't been involved in that way. Thank you.
So I have similar views. Like a municipality, a sheriff's office does not have inherent federal jurisdiction. So people that are here illegally, those are federal crimes, to an extent. I actually learned something. I was reading a little bit before we came here today, and I might have misspoke. It's actually, what I learned is that it's actually a civil violation for somebody to be here illegally. It's not a crime. It's a civil violation. It's not a criminal violation. And like I said, I learned that just not too long ago. So, but it doesn't change anything. It's that's not our responsibility. It is, though, our responsibility to have communication with ICE. And the reason why I say that that's extremely important is because of deconfliction. And what deconfliction is basically if ICE were to come in and there's no communication between ICE and the sheriff's office, and ICE goes and tries to make an arrest on somebody that's not here legally, and the community sees that. So they see people trying to take somebody else, and without their permission, what's the community going to do? They're probably going to call 911 and say, hey, there's a kidnapping going on, or there's something going on down the road that ain't right. So what's your response going to be? Your response is going to be deputies, municipalities going to that location as quickly as they possibly can to help that community member. That puts people in risk. We have vehicles traveling at high speeds, and basically when they get there, what they've figured out is they have blue on blue. So basically you have one law enforcement agency dealing with another law enforcement agency. So that can be extremely dangerous for the officers involved. That can be extremely dangerous for the community members. So that communication is key. That's the relationship that needs to be between ICE and local law enforcement. But we shouldn't be enforcing immigration laws. Thank you.
Okay, again, the question was, as Sheriff, how are we going to interact with ICE as an agency? I'll tell you what I won't do as Sheriff is create more confusion than there currently already is between Pacific County Sheriff's Office and ICE. I've been following this very closely, speaking with some of my supporters who really have a passion for this topic. And what we experienced in this last year or two was what I would say a complete breakdown in communication between the Pacific County Sheriff's Office and the federal government, ICE. And we all read the article in the Observer I couldn't make heads or tails of that. You know, I don't really know what went on at the upper levels here with that, with ICE. But what I will say is, if I'm sheriff, I'm going to, in real short order, make contact with whoever is in charge of the division here of ICE, and again, form some sort of a communication with that agency. We have to communicate. The last thing we want is for there to be an incident where ICE is active somewhere in the county, there's a shooting, and we're responding not knowing what's going on, and there's, now we have a couple dead federal agents in someone's driveway. That would be horrible. Now, according to the U.S. Constitution, it is the federal government's job to enforce immigration, not the sheriff's office. But having said that, there has to be communication between these two agencies. There has to be. So, again, communication with ICE, knowing who's in charge, and just developing a mutual understanding that ICE knows that if things hit the fan, they can give us a call before someone really gets hurt. That's the last thing we want. You know, seeing families getting separated, that really touches my heart. You know, I'm a family guy. I have 3 kids. I'm a substitute school teacher. You know, and here in this particular community, 25 students are no longer in this district here in Ocean Beach because ICE came in and took their parents away. That's tough. You know, as one person told me, this has really become more of a humanitarian issue than a political issue, and I would tend to agree with that. This is, you know, nobody wants to see that, whether you're super pro-immigration or you don't want any immigration enforcement at all. You have to realize that, you know, this is hurting the people in our community. This is hurting our businesses. I've had talks with owners of the shellfish business. It's tough. It's a really tough deal. Now, I'm not giving excuses for folks who are here who haven't gone through the steps that they maybe should have. I'm just addressing the issue that it is a family issue. It is an issue that really affects our local economy, our businesses, our schools. And what I will say is it sounds like ICE has backed off a little bit. But as sheriff, if we have a communication with ICE, it seems like at some point a sheriff could say, hey, ICE director, maybe you could back off Pacific County a while. You know, we've been hit really hard. But until we have that communication where we're talking freely, I don't think that conversation would ever happen. So, again, establishing conversation with the federal government and just being compassionate with and understanding with the families we have here and what they're going through.
Thank you. This next question is again for all the candidates. In regard to the Peninsula Community Watch Program, can you please share your thoughts on the importance of this program to you, and what would you do to support it, including the resources you would allocate to it? Let's start with Mr. Eastman and come this way.
Well, I think it's a good place to start. Again, as a deputy, every day I'm hearing from the people, what can I do? You know, there's people that want to be vigilantes and take their rifles and go out in their pickup trucks and start hunting people down on U Street. That may not be the best idea. But I've actually spoken with the organizers of this program. We've had some good conversations. And, you know, it's going to be a challenge. You know, you got a very diverse county. You have pockets of crime where it is horrible, out of control. And you have communities that hardly have any crime. And, you know, there's obviously going to be a focus in these really crime-laden communities that we do have. especially north of Long Beach, the Ocean Park area. Yeah, it is a very important program, and we'll see how it pans out. I mean, this is going to take a community effort. From what I understand, there's sort of division or block leaders. So we're going to have people volunteer to be block. I don't know if it's called block watch commanders or whatever, but it sounds like they're going to be in charge of their region, bringing people in, volunteer. I don't know all the details. I don't know how it's all going to pan out. It is a very new program, and as sheriff, I'm looking forward to exploring the options, talking with the leaders of this group. How are we going to mesh patrol with people out on the streets, being the eyes and ears with cell phones and cameras, I'm sure. As far as resources to allocate the sheriff's office, again, it's going to depend on what kind of program we end up having. Again, this is initial stages from my understanding, and I think there's going to have to be a lot of training, especially even at the deputy level. How do you deal with very concerned and very upset citizens who are out trying to protect their community when you get a call and you show up and you got someone maybe very agitated? Is this person, they might say they're neighborhood watch, are they really? How are we as a deputy going to know who these people are? And so I'm sure they already have that in place, to solve that possible dilemma. But I think it's a good idea, and we'll see where it goes. And I am in favor of supporting it, and I'll help any way I can.
So is community watch a good idea? Yeah. That's the whole idea. What is the sheriff's office for? The sheriff's office is for the community. That's what we're here for. We are part of the community. What resources are we going to allocate to this? It should be all the resources. Because again, that's our job. That's what the sheriff's office job is to help the community. The Community Watch program, all it is organizing the community. That's what it's about. It's putting a title to something, which is fine. It's getting people organized. It's getting people, it puts people in the general direction of where it needs to go. We've done this in Tokeland. We started a Community Watch program with our local folks, and the one that we started, it went for a little bit, but it lost interest. And from that, it sparred the next group, which was to incorporate not only Tribe, but to incorporate most of Tokeland and Grayling. And I can't take credit for it. The person that can take credit for it is Charlene Nelson. She's the tribal chair for the Shellarbay Indian Tribe, and she does amazing work. She gets people together, and she's a motivator. And she holds the groups. She gets people together. She seeks training for that group. She contacts us. She contacts the sheriff's office. She asks us to come and give updates on what's occurring throughout the county and on the reservation. That's what it's about. There's so many successes that have come from that. There have been warrant arrests from that. There's been reduction of crime from that. I know that the current sheriff is working with Howard Chang and down here in Ocean Park to start one down here. And like I said, folks, that's where it's at. That's where we're going to address the drug problems. That's where we're going to address the vehicles stuck on the side of the road kind of thing. Because if we get the community involved, get people, saying, hey, we see a suspicious vehicle down here and it don't belong here. Let's tell somebody about it. And by doing that, then it's getting the sheriff's office more involved, getting them to respond to those calls, and hopefully instead of finding a motorhome on the side of the road, we find a person in the driver's seat with a tow cable attached to it, trying to leave it there. Because that's proactive versus reactive. And that's where it needs to go. And like I said, I mean, just all of these larger issues, it's just the sheriff's office is not going to be able to do it by themselves. They need the help of the community. The thing about law enforcement is we're community members too. Basically, the only difference between us and the actual community itself is we get paid to do it on a full-time basis. So thank you, because it's an amazing thing to be able to do. Most law enforcement officers, we don't get in it for the money. That's not what it's about. It's about being part of the community and helping out and just being that better person. So thank you.
So over the course of time, I know so very many of you, I know you've seen me out in the community. I've participated in over 40 parades. I've been to safety fairs since we incorporated that into something that we do. And I think that community policing and community involvement is extremely important. Folks, I never work an 8-hour day. I am dedicated to my job from the time that I wake up to the time that I go to bed. And I've even been known to fall over backwards in bed in my uniform and wake up in the middle of the night wondering how I never changed out of my clothes. I want you to know that Crime Watch is super important to us. I think Robin is, should I give some points to the other candidate here, but he's helped us a number of times at our Crime Watch in Tokeland, and I will give kudos to Charlene Nelson as well for starting that 4 years ago. How do we do it? We don't have the funds to always send a deputy down there, and I sure wish we do. I have to stay within budget and make sure that we don't exceed that. But I will tell you that we have an extremely dedicated appointed staff, and it's not uncommon for them or myself, and that would be, for example, the chief deputies or the undersheriff, to come to these meetings to help tell people what we want Crime Watch to report to us. Because we don't want a million calls that aren't important. We want to know the things that we can take action on and that are important to the community. So for 4 years, I have gone to almost every single Crime Watch meeting, and sometimes I start my day early in the morning, and Crime Watch in Tokeland, which, as you all know, you can canoe across the bay faster than you can drive there in a patrol car with lights and siren. We're down there, we're listening to what people have to say. Chief has shown up himself, or he usually sends one of his officers, and we have worked really good together to try to support that, even though we don't have the funds. Now, we have for a long time reached out to the community, trying to find somebody down here that would help us do the same thing. We don't own the Crime Watch program, but we support it. And Howard is here tonight. Howard, would you stand up just for a second? He has come forward to us, this is Howard Chang, everybody, to be the director or the leader of our Crime Watch program down here. I'll tell you, I couldn't be happier. He's got a background in security and all the things that we would want if we put out a request for a resume. I'm very, very excited to see this start down here on the community. You know, we only have 10 deputy sheriffs and 1 detective, and so assuming they both have 2 eyes, you'd have 22 eyes. You know, you get 15 people in a Crime Watch, you have 30 more ears and eyes out there. And it's so... Exactly. Yeah, we have a ton of people down here on the peninsula signed up. Our first meeting is July 19th, I believe, so it's coming up here pretty soon. And I hope that we see many of you there, and that you at least check it out to decide if you want to help participate. But it is hugely important, and I'm excited to see it move forward down here.
This will unfortunately be the last question. I do want to remind you that candidates will be here once this closes to talk to you individually. And the fire department will hold a sheriff's forum for more questions and this kind of interchange at Beach Barren Field on July 25th. That's Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. So mark that on your calendar, because we only have one more question here tonight, and it is to all of you. What is being done about drug distribution on the peninsula, and what changes would you as sheriff make? I start with you, Sheriff Johnson, and move down to you.
So one thing that a lot of people don't understand is it is extremely difficult for a uniformed officer to directly buy drugs or be involved. I had an incident one time. I went into a restaurant, and most of the police came in the front door. I came in the back door. The guy reached in his pocket and he handed the dope to me, thinking it was a buddy or something behind it. That doesn't happen very often, folks. It's pretty rare. So obviously, we have a huge concern for drugs on the community, but the way that we really need to address this is to get our drug task force back. So what we had since, I believe it was 2005 when this was initiated, was the prosecutor's office had a half-time dedicated prosecutor for drug crimes. The county clerk's office had a part-time clerk. Our office had a part-time secretary to do all the reports. And then we had 3 detectives that would go out and buy drugs. You can't be clean cut. You have to look the part. You have to live the life. You have to be available at 2 in the morning if that's when someone's coming to town with their drugs. You can't do it in a uniform. And so I am working really, really hard. I have reached out to 12 other sheriffs in the state that used to have drug task forces that lost that. I've reached out to all the county clerks and prosecutors from those counties, and with only one exception, and it wasn't negative, the person just didn't want to get involved in this, they all supported me on this, and that's why I have personally taken this to the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. They're going to meet again later this fall. I'm going to be at that conference to once again say how important that it is. Because we need those people. It was just probably a month and a half or so ago that I had to watch a lot of our vehicles be loaded onto a car carrier to go to the state auction in Olympia. And they were cars most of you wouldn't know belonged to the sheriff's office. We would in fact sometimes get calls from people that said, "There's a suspicious car at the end of my block." Well, I'd have a big smile on my face saying, "Okay, thank you," knowing that was our guys undercover watching a place or doing surveillance or getting ready to purchase drugs. That's what we need to get back. That's what I'm working hard to get back. And I promise you that I will give that every effort possible so that we can successfully buy drugs again. Thanks.
Buying drugs. So I agree with the sheriff. Not about the buying drugs part, but so the drug task force is important. It is extremely important. I was reading some stuff, and there's an age-old saying, "History repeats itself." So I was reading through some articles on the internet, and it was talking about when Sheriff Benning was sheriff. And reading through that, he was talking about the problems that Pacific County was having. And it was the same problem. Sure. It was drugs. It was not necessarily the RDs on the side of the road, but from my understanding, he actually started the drug task force for Pacific County. And he was one of the ones that started that. So I guess my question is, we need to try something different. Okay? So the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That doesn't work. So is the drug task force important? Absolutely. We need to do whatever we can to get the drugs off the street. I personally, too, have talked to state representatives and made sure that they are having those discussions. because the funding comes from there. And without those folks doing their jobs to getting the counties and the cities that funding, then that's not going to help anybody. So trying something different. We need to change the culture. How are we going to do that? We do it by starting community watches. We start it by getting the community involved. We start it by getting the community so involved that when drug dealers come into the community, they're not welcome. We want to make it not profitable for them. If nobody wants them, then they're going to go someplace else. Is that going to be easy? No, it's not. Is it going to take some time? Yeah, it is. But the thing about that is if we never try, then we'll never start the process. So like I said, we just need to try something different. But until we're able to change that culture and make it so it's not profitable for drug dealers to be here, absolutely, we need the drug task force. We need law enforcement on the streets being able to, stop the dealers from doing what they're doing. So, yeah, thank you.
So the question again was, what's being done about drug distribution on the peninsula? This is where I work, folks. Very little, okay? Let me tell you what will be done if I'm elected sheriff. I have to disagree with Sheriff Johnson's statement that drug task force is necessary for drug enforcement. That could be farther from the truth. We don't need a state-funded drug task force to start making an impact on our communities. For example, 3 weeks ago, while I was working, I did a vehicle traffic stop for an infraction. Just a minor, he swerved over the center line. The driver had a suspended license. He was from the state of Oregon and headed to Ocean Park to enjoy the beach at 1 in the morning. Just so happened he had methamphetamine on his person after he was arrested. I seized the vehicle, took it to had it towed to the South County office. A few days later, I was granted a search warrant. I searched the vehicle and recovered an additional almost 5 grams of methamphetamine. That subject, I believe, is still in Pacific Island Jail. He may have been released, I'm not sure. I had the last case I just did, I forwarded it to the prosecutor yesterday. Possession of methamphetamine. That was 4 days ago. That was an arrest I made on the road as a deputy. When we don't have deputies out there, we're not going to be able to make an impact. And again, what I'm proposing is a 30% increase in deputies countywide. And using the manpower we have, it's going to save the county between $30,000 to $50,000 a year, probably, by just cutting back on some administrative wages and excessive overtime we've been spending. Folks, we're going to have 24-hour coverage on the peninsula. This is where we're getting hammered, okay? Probably 70 to 80% of our 911 calls are on the peninsula, and it's getting out of control. We're going to have double coverage so that our deputies have backup. I'm a late night guy. I go to work here. I should be at work right now, but I'm working all by myself tonight. I have absolutely no backup from the time I start for 8 hours. It doesn't have to be that way. A drug task force would be absolutely amazing if we could get the funding for that. Okay, this comes down from Olympia, folks. Maybe the commissioner's helping us out. But if that doesn't happen, okay, I have a plan. And what I would like to institute, I'm going to call it a Major Crimes and Special Investigations Unit. This is I want it to be a 4-man team within our agency. It would consist of our 2 patrol sergeants, a day shift, and a night shift deputy. And what this is it's a team, again, their assignment is patrol. But when we have a major crime or something like that, we have a team in place that's organized, cohesive, they have training, and they can work together to solve a major crime. Okay? Now, we don't have anything like that right now. We're a bit disorganized. Now, the other aspect of that is special investigations. We're going to have a team in place that can start getting the drug intel, that can start breaking away from patrol to handle these communities that are getting hammered with drugs. as it is now, the few of us that get drug intel, I'm working a drug house in Naselle. I'm getting intel constantly from a neighbor there, but I'm by myself trying to do this. And like the sheriff said, up at the patrol level, what can you do? But I know we can make arrests in drugs. The more deputies we have, the more impact we're going to be able to make. This major crimes and special investigations unit that I want to put together, again, it's just using the resources we have, folks, to start tackling these issues that are plaguing our communities. It's an idea. I've already talked with other chiefs, prosecutors. It's a good idea, and it's something we need to do. We're going to be able to make an impact here in our community in real short order. Thank you.
There is so much to talk about. This conversation obviously needs to go on with all these offices and all these candidates. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you for committing your lives to public service. We appreciate it. Stick around. Some of them will